All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me on another episode of the Sports Muse podcast. I am your host, Kevin Brumley, and I am joined by a legendary commentator in the game of MMA. You might recognize him from Bellator or his stint with the UFC. Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by Jimmy Smith. Jimmy, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Appreciate you having me, man.
I appreciate you coming on. It's really an honor for me.
Thank you, bud. Appreciate that.
No problem. So, we're going to talk about a little bit of UFC 250. Let's start off with this, man. What would you give this grade to this card?
I give this grade. I'd give this card a B+ A- grade because I think it's solid all the way through. There's, a lot of times they'll give you a great main event and a great co-main, and the rest are like, I don't know about this. Every card from top to bottom on the main card is going to be extremely entertaining. A lot of the undercard is going to be entertaining. When I look at the undercard and I see Jussier Formiga, who's outstanding. I like Ian Heinisch a lot. I think he's incredibly exciting. When you see things like that, you start going, okay, Cody Stamann versus Brian Kelleher. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Undercard looks good. And on the main card, I think every fight, even if you're not as enthused about the main event, which a lot of people, myself included, aren't for a lot of reasons. No disrespect to Amanda Nunes. In fact, I think too much respect for Amanda Nunes. We think it might be a bit one-sided. The rest of the card's really entertaining. I think they're all going to be fun.
No, I completely agree with you. This strikes me as a card that might not sell numbers-wise great, but if you're a fight fan, this is one of those ones where you can't miss. It's going to be action-packed. I personally can't wait for it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great.
Absolutely. So let's start off with the first bout of the main card, man. It's a great way to kick off the main card. We got Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Eddie Wineland. What do you think about that fight?
I think the worst place to be in MMA, one of the worst places to be, is you have a name people recognize, but you don't really have the teeth to defend it anymore. And unfortunately, I think Eddie Wineland right now falls into that category. You got to remember, it's, a guy who was at the top WEC, fought for a title in the UFC, but recently he's lost 2 of his last 3. He hasn't fought much since 2016. It's one of those things where he hasn't been that active. So he still has the name. People remember, Eddie Wineland. Yeah, I remember that guy. Like, I want to see him fight. But I don't think he's that guy anymore. And Sean O'Malley right now is red hot, has great combinations, great accuracy, like his heart, like his grit, decent ground game, full of confidence. And it's one of those things where I think Wineland is, you see the step up for the UFC. It's okay, we'll give him a name. We're not going to give him somebody that's out of his reach quite yet. And the way I try and explain to people, having worked for a couple of promotions, is promotions are hardly ever neutral. Sometimes they are. Sometimes it's like, hey, either person winning this is great for us. Who do you think will get more mileage out of, Wineland or Sean O'Malley? O'Malley, 100,000%. So you see the logic of the matchmaking is like, all right, let's give him a name so he's not just beating up mid-level guys no one's ever heard of. But we're not going to give him a name that is going to kind of derail the train because he's a very popular fighter. Eddie Wineland is right there in that sweet spot of, I know his name, but hasn't been at his best in the last few years.
And that's absolutely perfect. And that's exactly how I envision this fight where, Eddie Wineland's kind of one of those guys who was great at one point, and as MMA is so young into its mature state, a game kind of, I don't want to say passed him by, but the game's evolved so much so quickly that he kind of got left behind. He's had some injuries and whatnot. And like you said, Sugar Sean O'Malley is red hot. He's on the incline, while Eddie Wineland's either, maintaining or on the decline a little bit with his inactivity. But I agree with you. This is set up perfectly for Sugar Sean O'Malley. It's definitely going to be a good one. But at the same time, I think this is a decent test for O'Malley for the simple fact that if he's not sharp, if he's not taking this fight seriously, Eddie Wineland's not a guy to play with. So I feel like this is a very good matchup for Sean. And I'm excited to see it. Well, what do you think the outcome will be?
Well, it's O'Malley's to lose. If he goes out there and gets cocky or does something stupid or wastes a bunch of energy early looking for a knockout and then gasses late against a veteran guy who's going to walk through his punches, that's how he's going to derail himself.
Absolutely.
And it would take, really, to me, Sean O'Malley derailing himself to lose his fight. If he does everything he's supposed to do, I think he wins. Probably Sugar Sean O'Malley by knockout, probably around 2, maybe early round 3.
Yeah, I have round 2. That would be my guess. He's not like, he's a punches and bunches kind of guy. So that's what I kind of see, which brings us to our next fight. And you're talking about action fighters. We got Neil Magny, who that dude is just always scrapping, always bringing it, against Anthony Rocco Martin. What do you
Yeah,
think?
well, the issue for me is Neil Magny's build is just difficult to deal with. He's tall, he's rangy, he has a great clinch. He doesn't use his range that well all the time. He doesn't jab and wait for guys to come to him necessarily. Sometimes he kicks a lot from the outside, but he doesn't use it as wisely as he could. He's really dangerous in the clinch. What I was worried about in his last fight against Li Jingliang is I was there in Argentina when he fought
Okay.
Santiago Ponzinibbio, and he took an ass whooping. And I was like, I don't know if he comes back the same dude. I mean, that was one of those where I was hoping they'd stop it before they stopped it. I mean, there weren't a lot of fight stopping moments, but just a sustained ass whooping for a long time takes a lot out of you. And so I was worried he would come back and not look good. He did look physically good. Anthony Rocco Martin is one of those guys who likes to counterpunch. He's not the most aggressive guy in the world. He likes to wait and take his time. And in a situation like that, having fought better names, no Magny, I think he's in a better position to win the little tiny battles that win him a decision. I don't think this is going to be a barn burner. I don't think this is going to be like fight of the night, all action fights. Two guys who like to counterpunch a lot, two guys with builds that they don't use that effectively. So they leave some vulnerabilities. But Neil Magny has been through the fire a few times. He's fought veteran names. He knows how to win. You know, I tell guys, you know, when they're knocking everybody out and they end up going to the UFC or Bellator or a big name promotion, I go, in big name promotions, you win minutes, you win rounds, you win fights. Sure. You don't just go out there and blow guys away. It's like taking on really good defenses in the NFL or something. You're not going to get, you know, West Coast throwing for 400 yards a game. You can do that in college. You can do that in high school. You know, go to the NFL. It's like, hey, you know, that's pretty good. If you threw for 250 yards and no picks, you're doing great. It's a similar kind of thing. You have to prepare for that mentality. I think Neil Magny's just a little more in that mentality. He knows how to win minutes, rounds, and fights. And that's what I think this is going to come down to. I think it's going to be a fight of inches. And Neil Magny just has the experience to win those little battles. That's how I see this one going. Probably Neil Magny by decision.
Yeah, and I completely see what you're saying. Neil Magny's a guy with an excellent gas tank, so you never worry about him, you know, gassing out or anything like that. He is a guy with his length. When he was coming up, he's a guy that I was like, oh, you better watch out for him because of that awesome frame. He just never quite figured out how to use his full frame to the best of his abilities. But I've always been a big fan of him. You know, and you talk about the beatings he's taken. The Hector Lombard fight was pretty bad too in round one. He took a whooping in that one. And there's been a few times, I'm blanking on the name. He fought Neil Magny, and then the UFC wouldn't pay him, and he moved to Bellator.
Lorenz Larkin. That's
Lorenz Larkin. I couldn't think of his name. And that's another one of those. He took a beating on that one. So when he's
guys who put pressure on him beat him. Guys who could. Now Hector Lombard just blew his wad and ran out of gas. If he had you know, gas for another round, he wins that fight. Okay, yes. But the guys who come after him on the ground or on the feet, and look what RDA did to him. Took him down, arm triangle, done. It was just like mowed right through him. If you can put your foot on the gas and find that right movement, you can almost get inside that big frame, and he doesn't know quite how to deal with it. You know what I mean? He doesn't recover that easily. So, I don't see Rocco as that kind of guy. I don't see, you know, Rocco's a little bit more patient. He's a little bit more wary. He's a little more outside. He's a little more pressure guy. You have to kind of hit the gas and put pressure. And that's what Ponzinibbio did. The whole time he took the center, put pressure. And I remember seeing the look on Neil Magny's face of like, dude, what's it going to take to get this guy off me? And he never figured out, and he got knocked out. So I think that's the key to beating him. I think that's why he's never broken out and gotten into contender status in a very, very deep division. But he's going to beat guys like Rocco. He's one of those guys he's always going to beat the mid-level guy. And I see Rocco right now as one of those guys.
I think Aljamain Sterling. I think Neil Magny is the perfect example of, and I hate to use this term because it's kind of disrespectful in a way, but as a gatekeeper in a way, where that guy who's a name, he's an extremely solid fighter. And if you're a guy who's like up and comer, if you beat Neil Magny, you're legit. If you lose to Neil Magny, you're not there yet. And I just don't think Anthony Rocco Martin, who we, for a brief moment when he beat Ryan LaFlare, we thought he was going to maybe kind of have a coming out party. But I agree with you completely. His fighting style's not really what beats Neil Magny. And Neil Magny, it could even be a late stoppage kind of thing. Neil Magny's pretty tricky, but I kind of see decision.
Yeah, that's how I see it too. I think it's a close fight. It's a fight of inches, and Magny just edges him in close rounds. I really believe that's what happens.
100% agree, which brings us to the next fight, which is it's my main event. It's my favorite fight on the card. I'm a big fan of both these guys. We got Aljamain Sterling versus Cory Sandhagen. Man, this is going to be a good one.
Fight of the night.
Absolutely.
In my opinion, probably fight of the night. Look, God, and this is so hard to pick. Like, it's so hard to see kind of which guy's going to have the advantage. Aljamain Sterling, the better wrestler, is a better submission game.
Sure.
Cory Sandhagen is busier, throws a ton of combinations, loves physical pressure. He's 5'11". He's huge for this weight class. Mm-hmm. But Aljamain's a little bit more explosive, a little bit rangier. He likes to throw from the outside. But Cory Sandhagen, really, really tall and really gets good extension on his punches. And so I don't know which person's style gets around the other. It may be an idea of somebody letting something hang a little bit too long and they get countered, or give up that takedown when you don't need it. But what I love about Cory Sandhagen, and we saw this against Assuncao, is just physical pressure and a ton of punches. And just Assuncao could never get a break. Almost remind me of like a Diaz fight. Like, guys are just like backing up going, God, when will this guy stop throwing? He never did. And that range has good power, like I said, good size. But he does take a lot of risks because, much like it is, he lets his hands kind of go and hang out there a little bit, doesn't bring him back to his chin. There are a lot of gaps in his style. And against a guy who's physically explosive like Aljamain, I think Aljamain's the better athlete.
I agree.
Might get inside where, he throws a punch, doesn't bring you back, and Aljamain just comes over the top with something. And we've seen Aljamain get smarter and smarter and smarter as he's fought. We started out like a talent, and then, he ran into some stumbling blocks that had some problems, and then has gotten back on track. He's fighting smarter and smarter and smarter, and that may be key to beating a guy like Sandhagen. So the pick in this one is extremely tough, and Aljamain Sterling, I think, might go back to his wrestling when he has to, in terms of, I'm dealing with that pressure, this guy won't go away. Take him down, leech some of that energy out of him, fight a more veteran fight. We'll see if that's in Aljamain, but those are the tactical things I see when I break this fight down.
Yes. So I completely agree with you on everything. We've seen Aljamain, I think the biggest stride he's made in this game over the past, handful of fights, has his hands are starting to come along. He was very kick heavy approach. So I think the big question to me is his hands far enough along where he can really complete that game? Because I think Cory's really going to pressure him. He's really going to put it on him. And I don't know if his hands are where his feet are at. I agree that he's the better wrestler. I agree that he's better on the ground. But I do think, Sandhagen's a really good scrambler.
Very good. Yeah,
exactly. So it's one of those things where, man, I love Aljo. He's one of my favorite fighters. And I'm pulling for him. I just think Cory Sandhagen's just a little bit crisper with his hands. And I feel like the pressure, and we see Aljamain kind of usually in the third round, since he's so kick heavy. Yeah. He doesn't gas, but he starts to wear down in the third round. And I'm worried that if he doesn't have his foot down on the pedal going into the third round, that we could see him, maybe they split rounds 1 and 2. In that third round, maybe Cory takes one, or, both these guys are able to finish for sure. But for me, watching Cory, when he went up against Lineker, I was like, okay, like, this dude's for real. He's not afraid. He can take a shot, and he's not going to back down.
My issue, too, partly, is, let's face it, Aljamain Sterling needs to win this fight. This is a guy who's always saying he should be in the title fight. I feel disrespected. It should be me and Peter Yan for the belt. He got passed over for Jose Aldo, which I don't understand that at all. But he has a right to bitch and complain, which he's doing. But in order to do that in the UFC, you got to keep winning. The moment you lose, it's to the wolves with you, right? And so that's the issue too, is that at 30 years old, Aljamain Sterling at this point cannot afford to take a step back. Period. End of sentence. If he loses to Sandhagen, he can still have. I mean, he doesn't have to retire, but I'm saying like it will end his title run for the moment. And right now is the time he's going to get in. Henry Cejudo has retired. They need another fight to make a champion. That gets rid of another contender above him. He's got to make his push now. And maybe it's a bit of an emotional pick, but I think Aljamain, because of that, will have the grit for that third round, because Sandhagen can take a step back and still be okay. I don't think Aljo can. I really don't. I think that's going to motivate him to get out when he's sucking wind and he's a bit tired. I think he's going to have that extra bit of gas, because if he falls down now, He knows the way the UFC works. If you make yourself a nuisance and they can get rid of you, or they can bury you and make you a gatekeeper, they will do it. And he doesn't want to be there.
No, that's a great point right there. And he's somebody, I just broke down the bantamweight division last week, and he's the guy that, like, I feel like of all this kind of chaos with the bantamweight division, I feel like he's the guy that's really getting screwed, because I feel like he probably should be fighting for the title in all honesty. But at the same idea is, not a lot of people know who Peter Yan is. So if he goes in and fights, a Jose Aldo, we're like, oh, he beat Jose Aldo. But if he would go in and fight Aljamain Sterling, your casual MMA fan might be like, well, he beat some guy named Aljo. I don't know, whatever. But if you beat, a Jose Aldo, that definitely cements your name as like, oh, he's legit. But I'm really pulling for Sterling. I hope you're right. He really bites down on the mouthpiece and pulls out in the third round, if it does make it that far. But I just kind of see that it's going to be one of those razor sharp decisions, I feel like. And it's going to be one of those ones where they're going to the scorecards and I'm like, it's 29-28 one way.
No one's going to be happy at the end. At the end, no one's going to be happy. Yeah, I get that feeling as well, for sure. Both these guys so tough to finish, yeah.
Nah, absolutely. So, we talk about the bantamweight division, and we have a guy who's probably been one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC for a long time, and a guy who was at the mountaintop. For our co-main event, we have Cody Garbrandt versus Raphael Assuncao.
Oh, God. Okay. When I talk about loaded fights, and what I mean by loaded is it's unbalanced in terms of consequences, where one guy, needs to win, the one guy wants to win.
Yeah.
Cody Garbrandt, if he loses four in a row after being champion, 2 of them to TJ Dillashaw, in a division, like I said about Aljo, that's in flux, a great performance puts him right back on top. He's one of the contenders. He loses this, he's a flash in the pan to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Man, he had a great performance against Dominic Cruz, and that was it. And there comes a time in combat sports where the fans have to decide if you were a great fighter, you just had a great fight.
That's a really
Buster
good point.
Douglas was not a great fighter. He had a great fight, right? And so against Dominic Cruz, he had a great fight, but is he a great fighter? That's the problem. Against TJ Dillashaw, what bothers me about it, especially the last loss to TJ Dillashaw, was he just doesn't make good in-ring decisions. He doesn't make good octagon adjustments. His fight IQ has bitten him in the ass every single time, where he's a great scrapper. He hits hard, he's strong, he's aggressive, and he got knocked down twice by the same right hand. And I was looking at it going, why are you in the same position doing the same thing? They just got you knocked down, and then it got him knocked out, right?
Yep.
Well, I don't know if it knocked him down. It rocked him, and then he goes back to the same thing. I'm going, what are you thinking? Change up something.
He sits down on every punch. Like
every single punch.
I mean, come on. Like, after a while, like, I get it. You have some dynamite in your hands. But after a while, man, like, TJ Dillashaw can counter you. Like, you have to – when are you going to learn? If it wasn't the first time, how do you go into the second time being like, I'm just going to go back to the same game plan? I don't get that.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things where he has some momentum fan-wise, where he can literally say, that dude was dope to the gills when he beat me. And most people, I mean, that was his accusation before they fought. And then it got confirmed, right? He pisses hot for EPO, which there's no excuse for. There's no tainted supplement. You have to inject it. It was just like, mea culpa, I was wrong. Sorry. All right. So in a sense, what TJ Dillashaw said when he said, I was wrong, I did it, is Cody Garbrandt was right. Right? I mean, so the idea, too, that you could, if he came back strong, of course, he missed out on the opportunity against Pedro Munoz, but if he comes back strong, you could even say, he could still be champ if TJ were clean. I mean, you could still make those arguments justifiably where he could still be number one. And that momentum really helps out when it comes to looking for a title. That redemption story of this doped up monster beat me. I fought my way back. So he's very much in the mix should he win, especially in devastating fashion. But you just have to wonder if he's going to make the right decision at the right time. Now, that being said, Assuncao's more of a counterpuncher. He's a good counterpuncher. He's not particularly aggressive. He doesn't necessarily sit down on every punch. We saw against Cody Sandhagen, he tends to like wait for his opportunity. If it doesn't present itself, he doesn't force it. You can bully him. I hate saying that, but physically he's the kind of guy you can push into the fence and if you don't leave an opening for him to exploit, he is kind of content to wait for and doesn't push rounds. And so he's facing a very different guy in Raphael Assuncao. He isn't facing a TJ Dillashaw when he strikes. You know what I mean? Cory Sandhagen was able to take advantage of the fact that he didn't give Assuncao a lot of counterpunching opportunities, and Assuncao never sold out and made any. He never went, okay, screw it, let's throw a combination and see what lands. Didn't really do that. Did that with the takedown, sold out on a couple double legs, but as you said, great scrambler. Sandhagen was able to neutralize those situations. So he's facing the kind of guy that might be perfect for his aggressive, hard-punching style. And that Assuncao's a counter-punching guy, but he's not a super dangerous counter-punching guy. He's not going to hit you like TJ Dillashaw is going to hit you. So it's close, but I think with everything on the line and his opportunity to climb right back to the top, I think Garbrandt fights a smarter fight and comes out on top. But it's another tough one to pick, man. 135 is no joke.
Yeah, 135, I think, is not only the most underrated division. I actually personally like. There's a lot of really good divisions in the UFC right now. 55 stack, 70 stack,
legendary. Yeah,
but like I love 135 because you're talking about when you're talking about those lighter divisions, you're talking about the best athletes in the world. Because when you're going up to heavyweight, those guys have another avenue that pays them more money. If they go play professional football, they make a lot more money than they do fighting in the UFC. But these guys, these 135ers, they're
be a jockey or be a fighter. That's it. Those are the only options, right? If you're 4'2" and you weigh 120 pounds, you need to be a jockey, you can be a fighter. That's it. That's all you got, man. It's like those little guys, the guys in Mexico, these lightweight boxers are just amazing. Well, they don't have any other way to make money and be great athletes. It's boxing. That's it. So, yeah, man, 100%. I'm with you.
When I look at this, so when I was looking at this card, I was like, Raphael Assuncao's, and exactly what you said, he's a great opponent because he's almost the exact opposite of Cody Garbrandt, where he's somebody who's extremely technical, but he's limited as an athlete. Cody Garbrandt's somebody who's explosive. He's going to come after you. But what worries me is I said the same thing. Like I doubled down on, I tripled down on. I was like, he's beating Pedro. Cody's going to knock him out. Pedro doesn't have power. Well, we know how that fight ended.
Yes.
So Raphael Assuncao's that same guy, but I think he's more technically sound. He's been the guy who's been right there. He beat TJ Dillashaw. He's that guy that's right there on the cusp for almost a decade. He's been so awesome.
Beat Marlon Moraes too.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Everybody forgets that.
Absolutely. And he's been so good. I just don't know. I think Cody needs this. I think the UFC wants this. How you said, the UFC, if Aljo loses, they're more than happy to, kick him to the back. They want Garbrandt to win. Garbrandt's one of their guys. I think this fight is set up for Cody to win, but exactly what you said is it depends on how Cody comes out. Do we see, because he is a very underrated wrestler. He's a great athlete and he can wrestle. Do we see him try to press Raphael up against the fence a little bit? Just a little bit at the beginning, but if that doesn't work, because Raphael Assuncao's is no joke on the ground, I'm not sure if we see a little bit of a different game plan or if Cody's able to implement a different game plan than what Cody Garbrandt does. I don't know that.
So what's your pick?
I'm
putting you on the spot in your own show, dude. I don't care. I'm putting you on the spot in your own show.
I'm gonna go Garbrandt second round TKO.
All right. I'm going with Garbrandt as well. I think probably second round, maybe even first, considering the way that guy fights. It might be a first round, but I think it's going to be comparatively quick.
I just think he comes off a little bit slower in the first round because I think he's going to be really worried about being clipped. So I think it's going to be a slower, but with TJ Dillashaw or with Cody Garbrandt, who the hell knows? He'll do anything.
Yeah, so true, man.
Which brings us to our main event, Felicia Spencer versus not only the women's GOAT, but can we talk about this woman as like one of the just goats?
Goat? Yeah, goat? Yeah, for sure.
Against, so Felicia Spencer versus Amanda Nunes.
And the problem with this card, in my opinion, the only, I don't want to say problem is you got a main event where Amanda Nunes is the pound for pound best fighter in women's MMA. She's on top of two divisions. I don't think there's anyone in either division right now that gets to her. I think the only one that beats her is Father Time. I think Felicia Spencer is great. She doesn't do anything so great that that overcomes Amanda Nunes. It isn't a matter of somebody like a Mackenzie Dern that, let's say she went up to 125. Shevchenko, I think, is once again a level above everybody else. But hey, she could always submit her. She's that good. I don't see Felicia Spencer getting there. If she gets on top of her, she has great ground and pound. Do I see her getting on top of Amanda Nunes? No. Do I see her trading punches with Amanda Nunes? No. I just don't see right now a lot of meat on the bone when it comes to this main event, simply because the UFC has always had trouble building divisions above 115 pounds. It just, 125 is Shevchenko and everybody else. Nunes runs 35 and 45. There just isn't much of a challenge. And before them, it was Ronda Rousey and everybody else. It was Cyborg and everybody else. It's always been a problem that give me a compelling division. 115, really compelling. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. Everybody else, every other division is just owned by these incredible women's mixed martial artists. So I think at the end of the day, will be considered some of the best of all time. And so a hard-hitting Amanda Nunes, I think, beats anybody in the world at 35 or 45. I like Felicia Spencer. I remember she came out and put it on Megan Anderson, who had, called out Cyborg, supposed to be the next big thing, and Spencer just handled her. In the Dos Santos fight, same thing, handled her in the first round in a division we don't see a lot of finishes. That's kind of been to me, the hallmark of her career. She's finished everybody since the start of 2018. It's 4 in a row in terms of her wins. They've all been finishes. That's pretty rare in women's MMA. So she's got the skills. It's just a lot of people had the skills against Ali too. And it's just, if it weren't for Ali, they would have been champ, but sorry, it was just the wrong time to be number 2. I think that's the issue with Spencer. And I think Amanda Nunes wins it. Late knockout, or remember, this person Felicia Spencer went the distance with Cyborg. She can take a shot. So It might be by decision or late knockout championship rounds, 4th and 5th. That's where I see it.
Yeah, I try to talk myself into this where, make it a little bit more realistic. And I'm like, well, Felicia Spencer's, she has some jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
You're lying to yourself. You
can't
even see that. You're lying to yourself. You're going, hey, you're trying to. It's like here's a good thing to keep in mind. Emmanuel Stewart was one of the greatest boxing coaches of all time. He did color for HBO as a commentator. And he said, beware of comparison rounds when scoring rounds. He goes, sometimes a fighter's getting beat up so bad, and then in the 4th round, they land back some, and you give them the round. Like, no, they still got beat up. They landed back a little better. Like, that doesn't give them the round. But you find yourself mentally doing that, going, oh, good round for them. No, it wasn't a good round. They landed a few more punches than they didn't get shellacked like they did in the first 4 rounds. It's that kind of thing when you look at Felicia Spencer. You start going, well, she's got this, and no, she doesn't. Like, I don't believe it.
You're right.
She has good jiu-jitsu. So does Amanda Nunes. We just never see it because she knocks everybody out. So it's one of those things where it's hard to talk about Felicia Spencer winning this fight and not feel like you're going, I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be fair. We don't have to be fair. We have to be realistic. And I think Amanda Nunes is just the better fighter.
Yeah, and she's one of the
mic drop. Boom, done. That's it. Go book it. Go to your sports book right now. Put your house on it.
No, absolutely. And it's one of those things where we saw the same thing with Aldo. Is he was so good on his feet and stuff like that. We always forgot how good he was on the ground. And I think Nunes is the same thing. Like, she's great on the ground, but she's so dominant on her feet that it doesn't even matter. Like, it doesn't have to get there for her. And exactly what you said, she's so far above everybody else that, like, that's why it makes the call of the UFC letting Cyborg walk. And I get that she was kind of difficult, and I get that her and Dana didn't have a good relationship. That's what made that move so perplexing, is like, you could have ran that back and no one's going to argue it. Because you're talking about, Cyborg was dominant for so long. Why would you just let her walk and not run that back? Like, just sign her for one fight. Just be like, hey, listen, we're going to throw X amount at you. Fight her again. Winner is the female GOAT, that kind of thing. And again, like, it doesn't matter who they throw out there. It's just Nunes is too good.
That's the difficulty. That's straight up the difficulty. It's the difficulty they're going to have as long as until Father Time catches up with Amanda Nunes, or she wants to move on to other things and and raise a family, and retire, whatever the deal is. Until she wants to do that, she's gonna be champ. Until she decides, that she doesn't want to do this anymore, or once again, Father Time catches up to everybody. It's going to catch up to her too. That's when it's going to be. Even, a rematch with Shevchenko. Do you really want to collapse 3 divisions into one? That's essentially what you're doing, to take the champ at 25, fight the champ at 45, at 35.
Yeah.
What?
That's
You're just
tough.
going to wipe out 3 divisions? Kind of, yeah, it's weird. So that's the problem. And so they didn't sign Cyborg because exactly what you're saying. If you throw a mountain of cash at her and say, all right, 1 fight deal, and she wins, you're screwed.
Yeah,
You're
that's a good point.
screwed. And she could have, she could have won. Like the UFC is in the asset business, and fighters are assets. And the deal is that you don't pay an asset that can go leave and be an asset for somebody else. You don't pay off a house and then give it away. And so, but I mean, it's mercenary. That's how you have to see it. And when it came to Cyborg, that was the issue. Was, hey, look, we can throw her a ton of money for 1 fight, but she wins and then goes, screw you, you're cool, screw you, I'm out of here. What are you going to do, right? You can't keep her.
And that's the biggest thing. It's like, speaking of assets, you talk about like a Conor McGregor, and people are like, oh, he's going to fight like, Tony Ferguson when Tony Ferguson's ready to come back, or he's going to fight, so-and-so. And I'm like, listen, like, he's the biggest asset, like by a landslide, like he's your guy. Why are they going to take the chance of him fighting for a number 1 contender spot? Like, he's Conor McGregor. Like, he's going to fight whoever he wants, and they're going to figure out the biggest payday. And like, people that are saying like they're going to throw him up against this person to like, I get the Donald Cerrone fight, because like, no disrespect to Donald Cerrone, is, I don't know about you, but I was like, Donald Cerrone is losing this fight. It's stylistically a horrible matchup for him. And, you knew what it was. But again, it's just that asset thing.
Yeah. And that's kind of the way it goes. It's like a chess piece. You don't want to get it isolated. You don't want to lose it. So you put it in places it can move the best. And so the issue they have with Conor McGregor at this point is 55 is a landmine. It's just, show me an easy fight at 55. Yeah, we're going to be here all night. You're never going to find one, right? And so the issue is and the tragedy of it, to me, in my opinion, is he's the biggest name in UFC history, in the most stacked division in UFC, and he hasn't fought any of those names. The guys are on top right now. Well, let me put it this way. He hasn't beaten any of those names. Okay. Yeah. He fought Khabib. He lost. He hasn't taken on Tony Ferguson. He hasn't taken on Justin Gaethje. He hasn't taken on Dan Hooker. He hasn't taken on Paul Felder. We can go on and on and on and on and on. This would be like Muhammad Ali, sitting out his prime, fighting at cruiserweight or something, while you had George Foreman and Joe Frazier and all these, Floyd Patterson, all these great heavyweights, and he didn't fight any of them. Sure. That's what it's starting to get to. Oh, him versus Anderson Silva. I'm like, dude, I couldn't care less about him versus Anderson Silva. Like, I want to see him fight in the division he claims to be the best at, while it's so good.
Exactly. Like, just pick something. And like people were like, oh, in the GOAT talk, like, Conor McGregor. And I'm like, listen, the dude's never defended a title. Like, I feel like it's easier to climb the ladder than it is to stay at the top of the ladder with a bunch of dogs trying to chase you. And that's exactly what it is.
Everything.
To me, if I had to guess what Conor McGregor's next fight is, with the whole situation with Khabib's dad, and plus we don't know when we're going to be able to go to different countries and whatnot, I kind of see that. My guess is they're going to do Gaethje versus McGregor, and they love themselves some interim titles. Throw an interim title. If Conor wins, great. You got title versus title. If Gaethje wins, great. You got title versus title. But I don't know why you just don't do Diaz McGregor 3, and it sells like crazy. Either fighter who loses, they don't really lose anything. Like, it's not like it's a strike against them, because everybody loves both of them. I just think I would do that, and then if Conor wants to, fight the winner of that fight, which he shouldn't, but he jumps all the ladders and he jumps everybody, and I just, that's what I kind of see and what I kind of think.
I think the best fights available for him stylistically are Diaz and Masvidal.
Yeah.
2 guys who pretty much stand up and bang. Of course, Diaz has a superior ground game, not a great wrestler. So it's one of those things where those are the fights that make the most sense to me right now. I'd love to see him fight Gaethje. I don't see him doing that, because when Gaethje gets you, he gets you. It's eyes wide shut in the middle of the octagon, looking at the ceiling, eyes rolling into the back of your head. They don't want Conor to have that kind of loss. If he gets submitted, fine, and it's not the end of the world. Same thing happened with Khabib, happened with Diaz. They don't want the bring in the stretcher, Conor McGregor's, because then your value goes. It's like,
that's a good point.
All of that, yeah. I mean, getting submitted, I got submitted today. It doesn't matter. It's one of those things. But I didn't get knocked out today because I wouldn't be here. So it's one of those things where the perceived value of a fighter that is eyes wide shut, laid out, takes a real hit. And when Gaethje wins, typically that's how he wins. And they want to keep Conor away from that kind of moment.
That's a great point, you know. And if they did make that fight, that's one of those fights where I think a lot of people would be thinking, "Hey, he's gonna bang with Conor. Conor's gonna take him, like, you know, take him out." And I don't see that at all. Gaethje's such a great combination striker. He like does not care to be punched, and he's that dude. Who I'm like, I don't like that matchup at all for Conor. But I think Conor might like that matchup for Conor.
We'll see. That'd be a big leap for him. I see the UFC trying to talk him out of that one. It's possible. If he really wants it, they'll put it together. But I don't know. That's a dangerous dude whose high fight IQ is getting higher and higher, in my opinion.
So we're going to wrap it there. I want to thank you so much, Jimmy, for coming on. Like I said, this is definitely one of those things where I'm going to be telling my kids about that. I got to sit down, talk some MMA with Jimmy Smith. So pretty cool stuff.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. You have a good one, brother.
Thank you so much. And guys, if you like the content, please like, subscribe, check out Jimmy's show. I'm going to have it in the description because you can't have enough subscribers because, like, you know, I always watch your breakdowns. They're great stuff. And I appreciate it, man. Until next time.